Allahu Akbaro Kabira, Allahu Akbaro Kabira, Allahu Akbaro Kabira, Walhamdulillahi Kathira, Walhamdulillahi Kathira, Walhamdulillahi Kathira, wa Subhanallahi Bukratan wa Asila, wa Subhanallahi Bukratan wa Asila, wa Subhanallahi Bukratan wa Asila. A'udhu billahi minash shaitani min nafkhihi wa nafthihi wa hamzihi. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Today I want to discuss an important topic, which is more on the social side. And I've been discussing theological topics in the last couple of videos, particularly the video I uploaded earlier this afternoon or around noontime, which was a discussion in Urdu language with three guests on the general topic of revelation inspiration, that is wahi and ilham. And that's for those of you who understand Urdu, I encourage you to take a look at that approximately 1 hour discussion with three different guests. And inshallah, we will continue these type of group discussions on religious matters here on my channel. So stay tuned for sure. And inshallah, those three gentlemen will rejoin me again in the future, in the near future. Today, I want to discuss social conservatism and what should be the Islamic response or the Muslim attitude toward some of these social issues and some of these culture wars that are being waged, particularly here in the Western Hemisphere, but are actually also because the world has become a global village and because of globalization and because of the internet and the interconnectivity between the world, that now issues no longer are simply localized or regionalized, rather, they have become internationalized and globalized. And the Muslim world is also part of this network, part of this global village. And so there are some very radical transformations of thought and lifestyle and behavior and values that are occurring in the Muslim world just as they are occurring in other parts of the world. So the first thing I want to mention is that some of these basic issues that people grapple with here in the Western Hemisphere. For example, there's a huge debate on the issue of abortion. On one side, you have the pro-life camp, and on the other side you have the so-called pro-choice camp. And it seems that the trajectory is always in favor of those that profess to be more progressive. So in this case, the pro-choice camp intimately connects this issue with women's rights, with women's autonomy over their body. And there's a slogan that they're putting forward, which is called "My Body, My Choice." And now this slogan has taken off in the Muslim world, in Pakistan, for example, where the slogan is exact translation of this: "Meri jism, meri marzi." My body, my choice. So it's usually interpreted to mean that now a woman, she has total autonomy over her own body. If she wants to get an abortion, that is her free choice. That is her right, and and nobody can stop her. And likewise, it is also used in the context of a woman not being bound by the constraints of sexual morality or marriage, so that she is free to now sleep with whoever she wants to. It's her body, it's her choice. So these kind of ideas are penetrating the Muslim world. Now, of course, Islam as a religion, our Sharia, totally forbids abortion with certain extreme circumstances in which it is permissible, such as to save the life of the mother. If the mother's life is in danger in giving birth, then it is permitted to have an abortion if there's some sort of dire medical necessity. However, to say that abortion is allowed because, let's say, a woman simply does not want to have a child, and one of the reasons that is often given is that the woman is too young, it's a teenage pregnancy, or that the family is impoverished, they can't afford to have another child, and so they carry out an abortion, God forbid. And this is the murder of children. And the Quran explicitly states that do not murder your children. We are the one who provide for you and for them. So this murder, and it says the murder of the children is a great sin. This is what the Holy Quran teaches. The murder of children is a great sin, and do not murder your children. And of course, the Quran being a universal text, it is applying for all times and places. I would say is specifically referring to in this ayah is a foreshadowing the phenomena of abortion that has now become mainstreamed in the world, and pretty much all of the so-called civilized or first world, the Western world, has legalized abortion. And now you see that if you look at the stats and the facts and the figures, that abortion is responsible for killing millions, tens of millions of fetuses have been aborted, babies have been aborted. Now, from Islamic theological perspective, it is while the fetus is in the womb that the soul is blown into it, the spirit is comes into it, and it becomes alive. And so there's no such concept in our religion that a human is only comes into existence when after giving birth, after coming out of the mother's womb. Rather, even while in the womb, it is a human. It is a human soul, and to kill a human soul while it is in its mother's womb, it is murder. It's murder. It's murder of the most innocent. On top of that, so it's a very emotional issue, and it's one issue for which the Christian Church must be given credit that they are the ones who are spearheading the moral outrage to the phenomena of abortion. This is one of the issues where we have to give credit to the Christian Church by and large, meaning also the Roman Catholic Church, the evangelical churches, that they have taken a firm stance on this issue, and Muslims have not really taken a stance publicly on this issue, or not have made it into a movement, whereas the Christians have. And maybe that's partly because this is a phenomena that is has been legalized in the Christian West. In the Muslim world, it remains by and large, it remains something that is illegal. But even then, in parts of the Muslim world, the situation is changing. So Muslims also have to come out and have to address this issue of abortion, and have to condemn the phenomena of abortion as being murder of the most innocent, the unborn children, the unborn humans. Likewise, you have the issue of gay rights and women's rights and these kind of issues. So Islam generally takes a socially conservative stance on these issues, and Islam has given us permanent values, moral and ethical principles that are universal and that are permanent, meaning they can't be changed, they can't be altered. What's wrong is wrong, and what's right is right. Right is right, and wrong, the standard of right and wrong, that is our Sharia, our Quran, our Sunnah, the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, determines these matters, has determined these matters from us, and we believe it is divine revelation. So we are not in a position to alter the ethical teachings of Islam, the moral teachings of Islam, unlike some other religions who have gone the route of reformation. And when you reform your religion and its fundamental teachings and values and ethical principles, basically it's tantamount to saying that this religion is a man-made religion. So, for example, among Christians, you have liberal Christians, you have reformist Christians, you have the modernists, and you have the this new approach to Christianity, which is supposedly liberal and progressive and humanistic, but it is changing the values of the Bible. And they're saying, well, the Bible is not a immutable book, and these principles and these teachings are not hard and fast. They're not meant to be written in stone, so they can be altered. And as long as one keeps with the spirit of compassion and love, then these principles can be altered as is appropriate. Likewise, among Jews, you have the Reform Jews and you have the Conservative Jews, and both of these denominations of Judaism have largely reformed some of the ethical and moral teachings of Judaism, and even change the laws and some of the rites as well, rites. And basically, it's a tacit confession, that acknowledgement that Christianity and Judaism are man-made religions, that they can be changed, that they can be altered, their laws can be changed, their principles can be changed. They're not meant to be for all times and places. They're not appropriate for all times and places. So we Muslims should not approach Islam like that. We should take the so-called fundamentalist approach, which is that these are our fundamental teachings, and they cannot be altered, they cannot be changed, they are immutable, and they are permanent. This is the concept of permanent values. And when you take this approach, when you take this when you adopt this perspective, then you will naturally be inclined towards social conservatism, because the opposite of the social conservative phenomena is the so-called progressive, is the so-called liberal, and socially progressive, and wanting to change some of the values that have been that are traditional. So you will hear, for example, a term called the patriarchy. Patriarchy, what does patriarchy refer to? Patriarchy is a term that is basically used by feminists, but is now has become a mainstream term, and it means the traditional society in which males, in which men dominated society, in which they were privileged, and which there were strict gender roles, um, and which, generally speaking, men followed a specific role and women adhered to a specific role. And those roles were basically, for women, it was the role of being a housewife, a mother, who's a domestic, who is restricted to the domestic affairs of the household. That the role of a woman is to get married early, then to have children, then to take care of those children, to raise those children, and to take care of the household affairs. And that the role of the man is to have a career, is to go out there and work, and to earn the daily bread, and then feed his family, and then provide for his family, and then also to be the head of his family. That he is the one who is the ultimate supervisor of the family, and he's the one who makes the decisions. That his decision is final when it comes to the family affairs. That this was the general form of society in both the East and the West. Of course, there were different cultural exceptions, different isolated cultures may have been more matriarchal. And by the way, those cultures and those civilizations that were matriarchal, I don't think we can call them civilizations, because those are examples of societies that were very primitive. For example, among the Amerindians, there might have been some matriarchal sort of setups, or among different indigenous groups that are primitive in Africa or in parts of Asia. But those are examples of societies that were primitive, pre-industrial societies that were maybe not even have not even reached the Bronze Age, let alone industrial age. So, of course, when societies become developed civilization and entered into the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, and then into the Industrial Age, that societies were pretty much across the board patriarchal, or what is defined as patriarchy. And so that is a proof that patriarchy is a natural outcome of civilization. When a society sort of advances to a stage where they can be called a civilization, where they are developing a lot of sciences, where they're developing a society that is organized, and that is you could say advanced as compared to Stone Age societies or primitive societies. So patriarchy is a consequence of that, and our religion, Islam, could be described as a patriarchal religion, just as Judaism and Christianity, meaning the other so-called Abrahamic religions, are generally perceived as being patriarchal religions. And what religion is more patriarchal than Christianity, which whose theology literally teaches that God is a man, not a woman? Notice, for example, the Trinity: God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. There's no mother and there's no daughter. There's no sister. There's no God the mother. There's no God the daughter. It's God the Father, God the Son, according to their Trinitarian theology. And when God incarnated into a human, it was into a man. Jesus of Nazareth was a male, not a female. So their God is literally a male. Our conception of God is that he is not gendered, meaning he's not male or female. That this dichotomy, that this male female kind of division, this is something that is biological, and it applies to biological beings. It, it applies to organic life. It does not apply to God, who is the creator of life, and God who transcends biology and this kind of stuff. So our concept of God is different. We refer to him, of course, by masculine pronouns. There's a wisdom for that, but our conception of him is that God is not a sexual being. He is not a being that is either can be categorized as male or female. Rather, he transcends this division, which does not apply to him. Now, when it comes to patriarchy, it is said that patriarchy is an oppressive system, because this is a system that keeps women down, keeps women confined to the four walls of her house, does not allow women to come out into and fulfill her ambitions of having a career and breaking the glass ceiling and this kind of stuff. And this is true to a large extent, that the system of patriarchy, it disadvantages women in terms of having a career. And it's not that it's impossible, but generally speaking, it disadvantages women, and kind of encourages them into the role of being domestic housewives and mothers, and not into the role of having careers and being highly educated and being ambitious in that respect. But that is because Islam takes into account the fact that the nature of the woman is different than the nature of the man. That the man is naturally ambitious. Man is naturally very bold and brave and confident and wants to go out there, whereas woman is more soft and is more into children, and finds fulfillment in being a wife to her husband and in being a mother to her children. That is the ultimate satisfaction that a woman desires. And then when women, and because of the feminist brainwashing been taught to young ladies, that no, this is not going to fulfill your your ambitions. You need to have a career and everything, and career is more important than family, and in the traditional role of a woman. That because of this, many of those women who got duped into the feminist trap, that they, as they got older, they ended up regretting their life decisions of prioritizing career over family, prioritizing job over marriage, prioritizing education over marriage, and settling down and having family. That as women got older, these ladies got older, they didn't have husbands, they didn't have children, they didn't have families, they became lonely. They didn't find, they were no longer finding satisfaction and fulfillment in their careers and jobs. So this feminism ended up, ironically, hurting the happiness and the satisfaction and fulfillment of life for many women. And this is why Islam correctly is opposed to feminism and prefers what is called patriarchy. Islam naturally prefers the so-called patriarchal system. And so in this on this account, we are also socially conservative. Now when we come to another issue, which is the issue of the LGBTQ plus. This is a new movement. It's very new, as a matter of fact, and that really individuals never really identified with their sexual orientation prior to the last couple of decades. Prior to that, it was something simply incidental. If somebody was leaning toward homosexual behavior or heterosexual behavior or some other type of sexual behavior or orientation, that it was not the basis of an identity. That people didn't go around saying that this is my identity. Either I'm straight or a gay or lesbian or queer or so on and so forth. This is such a modern phenomena, and it is so problematic that it is constantly fracturing and constantly being, revamped and reconstructed. And for example, this acronym is so long, it's becoming so long that now they had to add the plus to include so many other identities that are coming out, like pretty much every year new identities are coming out. There's now something called questioning and two spirit and gender dysphoria and transgender and gender fluid, basically ideas like, a person feels like a man one day and then feels like a woman the next day. So one day he identifies as a man, next day it's a lady, and you have to refer to her with feminine pronouns. Otherwise you are basically engaging in discriminatory behavior, what they call misgendering. Misgendering is what they refer to when, for example, if there is a man who identifies as a woman, biologically he's a man, but he identifies as a woman. Now, if you refer to him with masculine pronouns, if you call him, if you refer to him as sir, he, his, these masculine pronouns, now you are guilty of misgendering, and this is considered discrimination, um, and you would be labeled a bigot, and you would be labeled a person who is a prejudiced, and so on and so forth. Oh, this is the world we're beginning to enter. It's a very scary and very disturbing developments. And even in the Muslim world, even in a country that is otherwise perceived as very conservative, that is namely the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. At least it professes to be an Islamic republic, but in reality, there's nothing Islamic about it. That in that country, there was recently a bill passed by the current government or the previous government, one of these governments, passed a bill giving transgenders rights and defined transgender as anyone who if a man identifies as a woman, then must be considered a woman and is therefore, licensed or is permitted to get sex reassignment surgery. Now, sex reassignment surgery is totally forbidden in Islam. In our religion, it is forbidden. It's forbidden for a man to identify as a woman if he's not a woman biologically. The Holy Prophet ﷺ even cursed men who simply imitate women. Now imagine if even imitating a woman is something cursed, and likewise for a woman to imitate a man, the Most Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he cursed such men and he cursed such women who merely imitate the other gender. Now, what about one who actually actively identifies with the opposite gender despite biologically being something else? Then they are obviously in a much more serious position, and they're in a position of being more cursed than those who simply imitate. Yet in Pakistan, the so-called Islamic Republic of Pakistan, now men can identify as women if they feel like it, and women likewise can identify as men if they feel like it. And furthermore, they can even get sex reassignment surgery, which is basically mutilation of the genitalia, and it is also taking hormones of the opposite sex, and other types of surgeries and other type of mutilations. And this is forbidden in our religion. It's totally forbidden in our religion to do this kind of activity, and this is cursed. Yet it's the state of Pakistan, which in its constitution says that it must be, the laws of this country must be in accordance to the Quran and the Sunnah, has passed a law which is totally contrary and totally in opposition to the Quran and the Sunnah. Recently, a so-called Islamist party called Jamaat-e-Islami attempted to put forward an amendment for this law, and which says that, the sex reassignment surgery and identifying people as transgender, it should not be based on on a person's feelings, but rather there should be approval by a committee or a board in each district or in each in each constituency, that there should be a board or there should be some kind of committee which will determine if somebody claims that they are transgender, will determine the validity of that claim and can either approve of it or reject it. Now, this in itself shows the fact that Jamaat Islami is totally not an Islamic Jamaat, because Islam has already made it clear that one who is biologically male is not permitted to identify as a woman. That is deception. That is a lie. And such an individual is cursed. And to get sex reassignment surgery is totally forbidden in our religion. Yet Jamaat Islami is trying to, take this middle path between one extreme and the Islamic position, and this is exposing the Jamaat Islami as a group that falsely uses the name of Islam. Their position should be that this law itself should simply be annulled, and that this law is null and void on the basis of the fact that it is decisively and clearly, manifestly contrary to the Quran and the Sunnah, to the Sharia of Islam. But Jamaat Islami has not taken that position. They simply want to amend the law and add some conditions. Otherwise, in principle, they agree with the law and with the so-called liberal progressive camp on the issue. And it shows you that the the so-called religious element in Pakistan are actually, they're only reactionary, so-called reactionary and right-wing when it comes to dealing with the Ahmadiyya issue. But apart from that, they're totally willing to compromise the Sharia. They're totally willing to compromise and are flexible on the permanent values of Islam, and that they're going toward this progressive modernist tendency. And if that is the condition of the religious element of Pakistan, then God help that country. What is in store for that country? A country that I would say that it has gone so down the deep end by making this law that it is a country that's gonna one day you're gonna start seeing gay pride parades. You're gonna start seeing all kinds of radical craziness, all kinds of obscenity taking place in public in Pakistan, because this law that they have passed, this is the foundation for opening this Pandora's box, and this is the beginning of the end for that society, and based on my assessment. So this is of course a very critical issue, the issue of our time, and it shows you how far the Muslims have fallen in the fact that they have not been able to come up with a cohesive and comprehensive response to these issues, that they're compromising left, right, and center, and that they are not able to put up a united and strong front to put an to prevent the liberalization of their societies. If that's the condition of Muslims in the Muslim world, imagine the condition of Muslims in the Muslim diaspora here in the Western Hemisphere, and where we are a minority. That we see a very rapid transformation of attitudes, especially among young Muslims, which is going toward liberalism and so-called progressivism. Where now, not only that, now you have Muslim groups that are actively promoting, transgenderism and homosexualism, and there are even groups that call themselves, LGBT Muslims, and they participate in the pride parades, and they have they're even opening separate mosques, which are, what they call LGBT friendly mosques. These are being opened, and they and these type of groups, although they may represent a minority from our community, they're actively being sponsored by and financed by um, powerful powerful interests, which are already peddling these issues and these movements. So Muslims got to be aware of that. We got to cling to our traditional values, our permanent values. We got to cling to our social conservatism, because if the moment we abandon the social conservatism, our community is going to disintegrate. Our children and their children and their children, who knows if they're even going to be Muslim anymore, or there's going to be they're going to apostate from Islam. And in the future, you see Muslims have invested a lot in the West. They have spent millions and millions of dollars on these mosques, these large and beautiful mosques that you see in major cities here in the United States and in Canada and in Europe, in the West. But and they invested in these mosques thinking, the Muslim population is going to continue to grow and grow and grow, And so we need these mosques. We need to invest a lot of money in them for the future. But the future, because they're not understanding the challenges to Islam and to our values, and in fact they're going along with them for political convenience, that they don't understand that they are trashing their own investments, and that in the future these massive mosques that they built, they're going to be empty, and they're going to have to be sold, and the community is going to disintegrate, and it's going to diminish slowly. It's going to diminish, and these leaders of our community, they're totally clueless about this. They don't have the intelligence, they don't have the wisdom, they don't have the understanding to understand these matters. And that's by and large because the leadership of our community, as I explained in previous videos, it is in the hands of individuals and a class of Muslims who are not known for their learning or for their piety. That they are in position of leadership by virtue of their money, by virtue of their success in their worldly professions. And such a leadership is a disaster for us because such a leadership does not understand the 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 needs of the community in terms of their spiritual and religious needs, and therefore it is going to result in a lot of damage done to the community and to the future generations of the community. Well, Muslims have to be socially conservative, and Muslims cannot compromise on their social conservatism, even if it is for short term political gains. It is true that, here in the West, our natural so called allies, or those that have most sympathy for us and want to be the most, accommodating to us, are what we call the left, what we call either the left or the sort of the progressive strand of politics, that they're the ones who are willing to embrace us. The right wing, especially the far right in particular, they in fact their politics is built on the foundation of opposing us. That's how they get their votes. Is they spread Islamophobia, and they spread anti-Muslim bias, and they make statements against our community because they're motivated to do that because their base, their constituency, are people who have basically white people who don't like Muslims, either due to xenophobia, due to racism, or due to fear of Islam, due to jealousy of our community, due to the jealousy of our community's values and prosperity. So there are many reasons why people, especially from a Christian background, oppose Muslims, and therefore support the right wing parties or the right wing politics. So obviously, those we can't trust in those parties. We have nothing to do with with that political part of the spectrum. But what about the left and the progressives who are very eager to embrace us, but not our social conservatism, of course. In fact, they want to manipulate us so that slowly we abandon our social conservatism. And they're saying, you know what? We are willing to embrace you. We want you to stand on the same stage as us. We want you to be our allies. We want to be your allies. But there are certain things that you as a community have to compromise on and be flexible about. And that's your social conservatism. That's your traditionalism. If you insist on that, then we're not going to be much help to each other. So this is the narrative being pushed out there. And we have to respond, in my opinion, my humble opinion. We can't compromise our permanent values. We can't compromise our theology or our religious values, especially on issues like homosexuality and abortion and transgenderism and these type of matters. We can't compromise on those matters. That's a no-go area for us. However, how then do we cooperate, or if we allowed to cooperate? Can we cooperate at all with the political forces, the mainstream political forces in this part of the world? I say, first of all, it's better to be apolitical. As long as it's possible and as long as it's feasible, the community should be apolitical, mind our own business. We don't have to care about the domestic politics of the countries we live in, as long as they don't directly affect us. As long as the issues are, and by and large, the issues that are in domestic politics are issues that don't directly affect us as a community. as a religious community. So issues like climate change, issues like economic and financial issues, these type of things, by and large, they don't affect us as a community. They may affect you in your individual capacity, but not as a community. So I say that for the interest of the community, Muslims on an individual basis, in their individual capacity, and Muslims and their communal capacity, we should be apolitical. We should not be involved with any political party. We should not be sharing the stage with any political party, nor should we be active in any type of political activity. We should only be interested in our religious activity and double down on our religious activity. We need to double down on our religious activity because that's our future. And without that, the faith is not secure, and there's the great potential of an apostasy, of a mass apostasy among young Muslims. Therefore, we must be apolitical. And now there may be circumstances where we are forced to become politically active when some of our religious freedoms, in particular, are threatened or jeopardized usually because of the rise of the far right. And there are examples that, particularly in Europe, you see that in some European countries, for example, there are calls to proscribe Islamic behavior and Islamic practices, such as the veiling and gender segregation that we practice in our community, such as the infant male circumcision, such as even halal slaughter, the biha slaughter of animals. That's there are many European countries. They want to prescribe this. They want to make it illegal, and they even want to monitor and see what is being taught in mosques and Muslims, our literature as well. And they will, this is particularly true in France and some other very so called progressive European countries, that they are openly um, interfering in religion. Whereas the very definition of secularism is the state and religion are kept separate. Neither can the state infringe upon religious activity, because that would be a violation of religious freedom, nor is religion, nor can the church, for example, infringe upon the activity of the state. So that's secularism. And where we are a minority, where we Muslims are a minority, secularism is the ideal system for us. But when I say secularism, I mean the American model of secularism. The American model of secularism is is based on the principle that religion is something valuable, religion is something good, and the state is something that must be mistrusted. The state can abuse its power. Therefore, the religion needs to be protected from the state. That's the American spirit of secularism. That's the original context in which secularism was instituted in the United States of America. It was to protect religion, protect the churches from the state infringing upon and intruding upon their religious practices and freedoms. Whereas in Europe, in France, the secularism it is based on another philosophy, which is that religion is dangerous, religion is a bad thing, religion needs to be contained, religion should not be prospering, and the state knows best, and so the state needs to actively contain religion. That's their principle of secularism. So they're both called secularism, but you can see how fundamentally different they are. In fact, how fundamentally contradictory they are, although they are both termed secularism. Well, this is an issue which I've discussed previously as well. So I've discussed all these matters in previous videos, but in this video, I'm sort of summarizing my perspective and my position. Inshallah, we will have subsequent videos on these important topics. Until next time, assalamu alaikum.